Okay, welcome to the PRH COVID-19 video series. Today we are talking with Deb Blazzard, the psychiatric ARNP here at Palouse Psychiatry and Behavioral Health. Her area of focus is going to be talking about the psychiatric kind of considerations for dealing with COVID and the impact on mental health, and just a broad other range of things that are important considerations. So we're glad to have you on, and thanks for participating in the interview.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Full disclosure too, Deb and I are partners in crime in the clinic, so I also appreciate you doing the interview since we work together every day too.
Yeah.
So to jump in, a big question on people's minds these days is kind of not just, am I feeling anxious, am I feeling depressed, but is it normal? What would you say?
Yeah, that's a great question. COVID, we have never experienced this, in my lifetime, and a lot of other people have not. So just the uncertainty of everything, I think it is very, very normal to be anxious and wonder what's going on and what's happening and how come I'm feeling this way. So I really think it's a normal response.
Yeah. One of the common things that people kind of talk about with that is, when is it kind of not normal? What would you say are the big signs of when it maybe is something more relevant to consider clinically?
Yeah, that's a great question. Usually what I tell my patients is, if it starts affecting their daily living, if they are starting to feel like they can't go to sleep at night because it's all they're thinking about, or if they are working on some tasks in the house and then they're just very scattered, they can't concentrate on what they're doing because, again, they're thinking about the virus and how it's affecting them. Or they start having just fears that are irrational. It's normal to have fears about this because we know nothing about it, but if it starts keeping them indoors, and granted, we're supposed to be indoors now, but if you're start avoiding things and situations because you're so scared, then that would probably be a time where you need to step back and check and just see, I think this has transformed into a little bit more than normal anxiety.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, like you mentioned, avoidance, and there's a certain amount that people should be doing right now. So I think what you're saying about your benchmark can be when it's excessive, or it's kind of, this seems like it's a bit much. So that's good information for people to have. And it is, I don't know about you, but it seems like there's this trend too about kind of, there's this bounce back about kind of not wanting to be as conscientious about that kind of healthy avoidance right now, or things like some of the states opening up early and people wanting, which comes from a normative place. But what would be your kind of advice for people about if they're feeling that, it's been 6 weeks, 7 weeks, cabin fever, just the financial impact? What would you say to people about if they're feeling that itch to kind of get back to normalcy?
Yeah, one thing that has been kind of a constant throughout this whole thing is that, we can go outside, we can go exercise, we can do these things. And so for those people who have been inside quite a lot, that would be one of my recommendations, is just to make sure they go outside, go for a walk, go for a run. Not only will this help their mental health, but it's beautiful outside. I mean, we just have a beautiful area that we live in, and just being able to be outside is going to be super helpful. Again, this is, we're kind of all in this together. We don't know how long it's going to last. I mean, there's experts out there that can predict and say, well, it looks like this, but we don't know. It's never happened to us before. So just being really comfortable in the fact that we're all in this together, and just remembering that if you need support, maybe to call a good friend and talk it through, because sometimes when you talk to someone and realize, oh, they're going through the same thing, it's a-okay. That is also very helpful.
That's a really delicious sentiment about kind of the taking advantage of the situation to keep those contacts going and nurture those relationships and use the support for sure. Okay. It looks like I got freeze frame. Did we lose you for a sec? Okay, we'll give it a pause. Um, yeah, I think while Deb's signal's coming back, this is the Zoom era, so this is the kind of thing that we're all encountering these days. Okay, we are back in action. Zoom problems these days. So Deb, thanks for your patience. So picking up where we left off, a couple other things that I was wondering about that people kind of you get questions like this a bit is for specific things that have to do with psychiatry. So people that have like a controlled substance, and they're wondering about when to call you, how much time should they give themselves, etc. The ramifications of COVID, the stay-at-home proclamation. What are the special considerations you would say for that?
Yeah, and that's a great question because typically we tell patients when you have about a week left, give us a call and let us know, and we'll send in a new prescription. And it's difficult right now too because so many people are staying indoors. They don't really want to come to my office and pick up prescriptions. And so about a year ago, I got set up with the ePrescribe, and so I can send controlled substances from my computer. That has been super, super helpful.
Yeah.
That being said, I would have to say give a little bit more time. Our staffing right now isn't as I don't know, as high as it usually is. My nurse is really working hard to get through all of the refill requests. And so, but she's doing a lot of other things as well. So if you can give your provider maybe a week and a half, to 10 days, looking at your pills, letting them know so that we can refill a little bit earlier, just giving them extra time to do that, not that specific, just to this time that we're having right now.
So really be proactive,
Yeah,
kind of ahead.
yeah.
Have you encountered any delays on the once it's kind of past your place where you send it on? Has there been any delays with things getting filled for patients that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. It
Okay.
seems like as far as our medications are concerned, we're not experiencing any like running out or anything like that. My patients have been able to pick up all of their medications.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I'm super thankful for that.
So it sounds like really the big thing is just given enough time to make sure
Mhm.
with everything that's going on. And like you said, the Chris is a jack of all trades these days. So
I know.
there's a lot of things. So
I know.
yeah,
That's
being
true.
proactive. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And that being said, just something different than controlled substances. I had talked to some of my patients who were a little bit anxious about just what we're talking about, like what happens if I don't have enough meds, or this is really making me anxious. And so we talked about the possibility of doing a 90-day supply so that they aren't worried about just a piece that they're not worried about anymore. It brings them a lot of peace. And so asking your provider, I usually get 30 days supply, but is this a medication I can get a 90-day supply, and then I'm not worried so much. So I've been doing that quite a bit, which is great. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, and that probably builds on the nature of the trust that you have with your relationship with your patients and things.
Mhm.
And but like one thing as I'm hearing you say that is not being afraid to ask. Um,
Right, right.
Preparation, proactive
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Mhm.
The I know time wise we're coming up against already. But
Mhm.
I did want to ask kind of and I know a little bit offhand, but just so people kind of get a sense of this, because the field of mental health is it's kind of being impacted in interesting ways, whether it's technology, that kind of thing. But for you, how would you say what are the ways that COVID's affected your practice?
Yeah, and actually much differently than I expected. I really thought with my patients who are anxious and depressed that this would just really rock their world, but it almost seems like I've had several patients say that this is fine for them. They're doing great, and the reason is that they tend to isolate in the first place. They tend not to go out in the first place. So
Mm-hmm.
it was really, really interesting to talk to some of my patients who are saying that now people can see what my life is like and maybe not be so judgmental. And it's a normal place for me, even though maybe it doesn't feel as normal. So
Mhm.
some of my patients, it's been like a blessing for them because people can understand a little bit better what they go through. So I think
Mhm.
it's been great. It's been
That's a
really
that's an
great.
interesting point about it being kind of vindicating or validating about like this is what it's like, this isolation that everybody is just struggling with and
We're
everybody's
worried about,
suffering.
yeah.
Yeah, like
Mhm.
try that, 24/7.
I know. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
true.
so that's a good point. It also
Mhm.
reminds me of what you said about right now there's a lot of advocacy for suffering and not in the
Mhm.
way that people want suffering, obviously, but
Right,
there's a lot of advocacy about like it's okay to be not okay and it's okay to be
right,
suffering. And
right.
what you said, it's okay to be okay too.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's not all horrible. And if you're really capitalizing on this opportunity, things like spending time with family, like you said earlier, or, board games at home, finding interesting ways to fill your time, or if
Mhm.
you're just digging the vacation time. I mean, there's people that are suffering, obviously. So this isn't something to strive for, but if you just
No.
notice that you're okay, maybe don't feel bad about that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and help others. And if you are
Ooh,
okay,
yeah.
if you're doing okay, then yeah, help others who maybe
hmm
aren't doing okay. And yeah, you can and build those relationships that maybe
hmm
you haven't had time to build before.
That's excellent.
Mhm.
Time wise, okay, I did want to ask you one more question,
Okay.
and feel free not to answer if you don't want to.
Okay.
But for you personally, kind of in your personal life, your family, what are the ways that COVID's really impacted you?
Yeah, and us personally, my family, I don't want to say I love it because it's probably not a lot of people love it, but for us, we just have a really busy lifestyle with sports and academics and always going.
hmm
And this being cut out for us, we've been able to spend time together. We've been able to talk about tough subjects where usually we're just like, oh yeah, yeah, whatever. We got to talk about that later. So we've been able to sit and talk about those things, and it's been so amazing just this time we've been able to spend together as a family. Now, if you ask my 16-year-old, she doesn't think
hmm
this is super, super great, but
Yeah.
I've seen, a new side of her too that I really, really like. A side that's not as stressed, a side that is just more happy to be around us. And it's
hmm
something, I know it's not going to last forever. And I'm trying to think, how can I pick up pieces of what this COVID and this lifestyle we're having right now and put it back when restrictions open up and things of that nature because I I love it.
Yeah.
I
I, I
love
I I really like what you're saying. I mean that
it.
it's the positivity in it seems really
Mhm,
important these days, especially as we've been at this for a while, and so
mhm.
being able to focus on the silver linings or the things that we might learn from this. I mean the pandemics. That one of the things about pandemics, which like you said, none of us have been in one unless you're around
Right,
in 1918.
right,
Is we
right.
learn a lot and we learn
Yeah.
things that might stay that way afterwards. Like
Mhm.
I mean, I'm sure you feel the same way. I'll be curious what happens with telehealth afterwards.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
insurances and,
Mhm.
I will be too. It's
Yeah.
opened a lot of doors.
Mhm. And so on that lines, like what you're talking about with your 16-year-old, that might maybe this will be this kind of joining experience that you described.
Mhm.
Part of that might be permanent,
Yeah,
and
I hope
hopefully
so.
it will be. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, thank you very much for
You're welcome.
participating.
Yeah.
This is a fun interview, and it's always fun working with
Yeah.
you anyway. But it's fun to do it on the Zoom format.
Yeah.